There are stories that entertain, and then there are stories that grab you by the hand and pull you straight into the unknown. In the last video, we stepped into a world where fugitives hid beneath floorboards, where heartbreak echoed under coconut palms, and where a single melody could stir ghosts from forgotten windows. We watched lost souls drift through the South Seas, searching for shelter, forgiveness, or simply a place where their names could disappear. But what comes next cuts even deeper. In the video, we return to the den of mystery, a place where truth is stranger than fiction, where every man carries a secret heavier than the sea itself. Broken hearts, runaway lovers, hunted criminals, and the girl who sings to the gods of the forest. Their stories collide in ways no one could predict. And trust me, what unfolds now will make you question fate, mercy, and the thin line between guilt and redemption. Before we continue, my friends, if you love journeys filled with raw humanity and unforgettable characters, please support Channel Sleep Stories with a like and a subscription. It helps this channel grow and lets me bring you even more powerful tales. Now, let's step back into the romance story. The night is waiting. So many men, so many fancies. My fancy was for an island. Perhaps boyhood's glamour hung yet round sea-girt rocks, and fairyland's forlorn still beckoned me. Perhaps I felt that London was too full, the Highlands rather fuller. The Swiss mountains most insufferably crowded of them all. Money can buy company, and it can buy retirement. The latter service I asked now of the moderate wealth with which my poor cousin Tom's death had endowed me. Everybody was good enough to suppose that I rejoiced at Tom's death, whereas I was particularly sorry for it, and was not consoled even by the prospect of the island. My friends understood this wish for an island as little as they appreciated my feelings about poor Tom. Beatrice was most emphatic in declaring that a horrid little island had no charms for her, and that she would never set foot in it. This declaration was rather annoying, because I had imagined myself spending my honeymoon with Beatrice on the island. But life is not all honeymoon, and I decided to have the island nonetheless. Besides, I was not to be married for a year. Mrs. Kenneth Hipgrave had insisted on this delay in order that we might be sure that we knew our own hearts. And as I may say without unfairness that Mrs. Hipgrave was to a considerable degree responsible for the engagement, she asserted the fact herself with much pride. I thought that she had a right to some voice in the date of the marriage. Moreover, the postponement just gave me the time to go over and settle affairs in the island. For I had bought it. It cost me £7,550, rather a fancy price, but I could not haggle with the old lord, half to be paid to the Lord's bankers in London, and the second half to him in Nopalier, when he delivered possession to me. The Turkish government had sanctioned the sale, and I had agreed to pay £100 yearly as tribute. This sum I was entitled, in my turn, to levy on the inhabitants. In fact, my dear lord, said old Mason to me when I called on him in Lincoln's Inn Fields, the whole affair is settled. I congratulate you on having got just what was your whim. You are over 100 miles from the nearest land roads. You see, he laid a map before me. You are off the steamship tracks. The Austrian Lloyds to Alexandria leave you far to the northeast. You are equally remote from any submarine cable. Here on the southwest, from Alexandria to Candia, is the nearest. You will have to fetch your letters. I shouldn't think of doing such a thing, said I indignantly. Then you'll only get them once in 3 months. Nopalier is extremely rugged and picturesque. It is 9 miles long and 5 broad. It grows cotton, wine, oil, and a little corn. The people are quite unsophisticated, but very good-hearted. And, said I, there are only 370 of them, all told. I really think I shall do very well there. I've no doubt you will. By the way, treat the old gentleman kindly. He's terribly cut up at having to sell. My dear island, he writes, is second to my dead son's honor, and to nothing else. His son, you know, Lord Wheatley, was a bad lot, a very bad lot indeed. He left a heap of unpaid debts, didn't he? Yes, gambling debts. He spent his time knocking about Paris and London with his cousin Constantine, by no means an improving companion, if report speaks truly. And your money is to pay the debts, you know? Poor old chap, said I sympathized with him in the loss of his island. Here's the house, you see, said Mason, turning to the map and dismissing the sorrows of the old lord of Nopalier. About the middle of the island, nearly 1,000 feet above the sea. I'm afraid it's a tumble-down old place and will swallow a lot of money without looking much better for the dose. To put it into repair for the reception of the future Lady Wheatley would cost. The future Lady Wheatley said she won't go there on any account, I interrupted. But, my very dear lord, cried he, aghast, if she won't. She won't, and there's an end of it, Mr. Mason. Well, good day. I'm to have possession in a month. In a month to the very day on the 7th of May. All right, I shall be there to take it. Escaping from the legal quarter, I made my way to my sister's house in Cavendish Square. She had a party, and I was bound to go by brotherly duty. As luck would have it, however, I was rewarded for my virtue, and if that's not luck in this huddle-muddle world, I don't know what is. The Turkish ambassador dropped in, and presently James came and took me up to him. My brother-in-law, James Cardew, is always anxious that I should know the right people. The Pasha received me with great kindness. You are the purchaser of Nopalier, aren't you? He asked, after a little conversation. The matter came before me officially. I'm much obliged, said I, for your ready consent to the transfer. Oh, it's nothing to us. In fact, our tribute, such as it is, will be safer. Well, I'm sure I hope you'll settle in comfortably. Oh, I shall be all right. I know the Greeks very well. You see, been there a lot. And, of course, I talk the tongue, because I spent 2 years hunting antiquities in the Morea and some of the islands. The Pasha stroked his beard, as he observed in a calm tone. The last time a Stephanopoulos tried to sell Nopalier, the people killed him, and turned the purchaser. He was a Frenchman, a Baron de Zonville, adrift in an open boat, with nothing on but his shirt. Good heavens! Was that recently? No, 200 years ago. But it's a conservative part of the world, you know. And His Excellency smiled. They were described to me as good-hearted folk, said I. Unsophisticated, of course, but good-hearted. They think that the island is theirs, you see, he explained, and that the Lord has no business to sell it. They may be good-hearted, Lord Wheatley, but they are tenacious of their rights. But they can't have any rights, I expostulated. None at all, he assented. But a man is never so tenacious of his rights as when he hasn't any. However, autres tong autres mors, I don't suppose you'll have any trouble of that kind. Certainly I hope not, my dear lord. Surely your government will see to that, I suggested. His Excellency looked at me, then, although by nature a grave man, he gave a low humorous chuckle and regarded me with visible amusement. Oh, of course, you can rely on that, Lord Wheatley, said he. That is a diplomatic assurance, Your Excellency, I ventured to suggest, with a smile. It is unofficial, said he, but as binding as if it were official. Our governor in that district of the empire is a very active man, yes, a decidedly active man. The only result of this conversation was that, when I was buying my sporting guns in St. James's Street, the next day I purchased a couple of pairs of revolvers at the same time. It is well to be on the safe side, and, although I attached little importance to the bygone outrage of which the ambassador spoke, I did not suppose that the police service would be very efficient. In fact, I thought it prudent to be ready for any trouble that the old-world notions of the Neapolitans might occasion. But in my heart, I meant to be very popular with them. For I cherished the generous design of paying the whole tribute out of my own pocket and of disestablishing in Nopalier what seems to be the only institution in no danger of such treatment here, the tax-gatherer. If they understood that intention of mine, they would hardly be so short-sighted as to set me adrift in my shirt like a second Baron de Zonville, or so unjust as to kill poor old Stephanopoulos as they had killed his ancestor. Besides, as I comforted myself by repeating, they were a good-hearted race. Unsophisticated, of course, but thoroughly good-hearted. My cousin, young Denny Swinton, was to dine with me that evening at the Optimum. Denny, a familiar form of Dennis, was the only member of the family who sympathized thoroughly with me about Nopalier. He was wild with interest in the island, and I looked forward to telling him all I had heard about it. I knew he would listen, for he was to go with me and help me to take possession. The boy had almost wept on my neck when I asked him to come. He had just left Woolwich and was not to join his battalion for 6 months. He was thus, as he put it, at a loose end, and succeeded in persuading his parents that he ought to learn modern Greek. General Swinton was rather cold about the project. He said that Denny had spent 10 years on ancient Greek and knew nothing about it, and probably would not learn much of the newer sort in 3. months, but his wife thought it would be a nice trip for Denny. Well, it turned out to be a very nice trip for Denny. But if Mrs. Swinton had known, however, if it comes to that, I might just as well exclaim, if I had known myself. Denny had taken a table next, but one to the west end of the room, and was drumming his fingers impatiently on the cloth when I entered. He wanted both his dinner and the latest news about Neopalier. So I sat down and made haste to satisfy him in both respects. Traveling with equal steps through the two matters, we had reached the first entree and the fate of the murdered Stephanopoulos, which Denny, for some reason, declared was a lark, when two people came in and sat down at the table beyond ours and next to the wall, where two chairs had been tilted up in token of pre-engagement. The man for the pair were man and woman was tall and powerfully built. His complexion was dark, and he had good regular features. He looked also as if he had a bit of a temper somewhere about him. I was conscious of having seen him before, and suddenly recollected that by a curious chance I had run up against him twice in St. James's Street that very day. The lady was handsome. She had an Italian cast of face, and moved with much grace. Her manner was rather elaborate, and, when she spoke to the waiter, I detected a pronounced foreign accent. Taken together, they were a remarkable couple and presented a distinguished appearance. I believe I am not a conceited man, but I could not help wondering whether their thoughts paid me a similar compliment, for I certainly detected both of them casting more than one curious glance towards our table. And when the man whispered once to a waiter, I was sure that I formed the subject of his question. Perhaps he also remembered our two encounters. "I wonder if there's any chance of a row," said Denny in a tone that sounded wistful. "Going to take anybody with you, Charlie?" "Only Watkins. I must have him. He always knows where everything is. And I've told Hogevert, my old dragoman, to meet us in Rhodes. He'll talk their own language to the beggars, you know. But he's a German, isn't he?" "He thinks so," I answered. "He's not certain, you know. Anyhow, he chatters Greek like a parrot. He's a pretty good man in a row, too. But there won't be a row, you know." "I suppose there won't," admitted Denny ruefully. "For my own part," said I meekly, "as I'm going for the sake of quiet, I hope there won't." In the interest of conversation I had forgotten our neighbors. But now, a lull occurring in Denny's questions and surmises, I heard the lady's voice. She began a sentence and began it in Greek. That was a little unexpected, but it was more strange that her companion cut her short, saying very peremptorily, "Don't talk Greek, talk Italian." This he said in Italian, and I, though no great hand at that language, understood so much. Now why shouldn't the lady talk Greek? If Greek were the language that came naturally to her tongue, it would be as good a shield against eavesdroppers as most languages. Unless indeed I, who was known to be an amateur of Greece and Greek things, were looked upon as a possible listener. Recollecting the glances which I had detected, recollecting again those chance meetings, I ventured on a covert gaze at the lady. You're watching this video on Good Stories. Welcome, my friends. I hope you enjoy every moment of it. Thank you so much for subscribing and hitting that like button. Your support truly means the world to me. Her handsome face expressed a mixture of anger, alarm, and entreaty. The man was speaking to her now in low, urgent tones. He raised his hand once and brought it down on the table as though to emphasize some declaration, perhaps some promise which he was making. She regarded him with half-angry, distrustful eyes. He seemed to repeat his words, and she flung at him in a tone that grew suddenly louder, and in words that I could translate. "Enough! I'll see to that. I shall come too." Her heat stirred no answering fire in him. He dropped his emphatic manner, shrugged a tolerant as you will, with eloquent shoulders, smiled at her, and, reaching across the table, patted her hand. She held it up before his eyes, and with the other hand pointed at a ring on her finger. "Yes, yes, my dearest," said he, and he was about to say more, when, glancing round, he caught my gaze retreating in hasty confusion to my plate. I dared not look up again, but I felt his scowl on me. I suppose that I deserved punishment for my eavesdropping. "And when can we get off, Charlie?" asked Denny in his clear young voice. My thoughts had wandered from him, and I paused for a moment as a man does when a question takes him unawares. There was silence at the next table also. The fancy seemed absurd, but it occurred to me that there to my answer was being waited for. Well, they could know if they liked. It was no secret. "In a fortnight," said I. We'll travel easily and get there on the 7th of next month. That's the day on which I'm entitled to take over my kingdom. We shall go to Rhodes. Hogevert will have got me a little yacht, and then goodbye to all this. And a great longing for solitude and a natural life came over me as I looked round on the gilded cornices, the gilded mirrors, the gilded flower vases, and the highly gilded company of the Optimum. I was roused from my pleasant dreams by a high vivacious voice, which I knew very well. Looking up, I saw Miss Hipgrave, her mother, and young Bennet Hamlin standing before me. I disliked young Hamlin, but he was always very civil to me. "Why, how early you two have dined," cried Beatrice. "You're at the Savory, aren't you? We've only just come." "Are you going to dine?" I asked, rising. "Take this table, we're just off." "Well, we may as well, mayn't we?" said my fiancé. "Sorry you're going, though." "Oh, yes, we're going to dine with Mr. Bennet Hamlin. That's what you're for, isn't it, Mr. Hamlin?" "Why, he's not listening." He was not, strange to say, listening, although as a rule he listened to Beatrice with infinite attention and the most deferential of smiles. But just now he was engaged in returning a bow, which our neighbor at the next table had bestowed on him. The lady there had risen already and was making for the door. The man lingered and looked at Hamlin, seeming inclined to back up his bow with a few words of greeting. Hamlin's air was not, however, encouraging, and the stranger contented himself with a nod and a careless "How are you?" And, with that, followed his companion. Hamlin turned round, conscious that he had neglected Beatrice's remark and full of penitence for his momentary rudeness. "I beg your pardon," said he, with an apologetic smile. "Oh," answered she, "I was only saying that men like you were invented to give dinners. You're a sort of automatic feeding machine. You ought to stand open all day. Really, I often miss you at lunchtime." "My dear Beatrice," said Mrs. Kenneth Hipgrave, with that peculiar lift of her brows which meant, "How naughty the dear child is, oh, but how clever." "It's all right," said Hamlin meekly. "I'm awfully happy to give you a dinner anyhow, Miss Beatrice." Now I had nothing to say on this subject, but I thought I would just make this remark. "Miss Hipgrave," said I, "is very fond of a dinner." Beatrice laughed. She understood my little correction. "He doesn't know any better, do you?" said she pleasantly to Hamlin. "We shall civilize him in time, though, then I believe he'll be nicer than you, Charlie, I really do." "I shall be uncivilized by then," said I. "Oh, that wretched island," cried Beatrice. "You're really going?" "Most undoubtedly. By the way, Hamlin, who's your friend?" Surely this was an innocent enough question, but little Hamlin went red from the edge of his clipped whisker on the right to the edge of his mathematically equal whisker on the left. "Friend," said he in an angry tone, "he's not a friend of mine. I only met him on the Riviera. That, I admitted, does not, happily, in itself constitute a friendship. And he won 100 louis of me in the train between Cannes and Monte Carlo. Not bad going that," observed Denny in an approving tone. "Is he then in Grec?" asked Mrs. Hipgrave, who loves a scrap of French. "In both senses, I believe," answered Hamlin viciously. "And what's his name?" said I. "Really, I don't recollect," said Hamlin rather petulantly. "It doesn't matter," observed Beatrice, attacking her oysters which had now made their appearance. "My dear Beatrice," I remonstrated, "you're the most charming creature in the world, but not the only one." "You mean that it doesn't matter to you?" "Oh, don't be tiresome. It doesn't matter to you either, you know. Do go away and leave me to dine in peace." "Half a minute," said Hamlin. "I thought I'd got it just now, but it's gone again. Look here, though, I believe it's one of those long things that end in pulos." "Oh, it ends in pulos, does it?" said I in a meditative tone. "My dear Charlie," said Beatrice, "I shall end in Bedlam if you're so very tedious. What in the world I shall do when I'm married, I don't know." "My dearest," said Mrs. Hipgrave, and a stage direction might add, "business with brows as before." "Pulos," I repeated thoughtfully. "Could it be Constantinopolis?" asked Hamlin, with a nervous deference to my Hellenic learning. "It might conceivably," I hazarded, "be Constantine Stephanopoulos." "Then," said Hamlin, "I shouldn't wonder if it was. Anyhow, the less you see of him, Wheatley, the better. Take my word for that." "But," I objected, and, I must admit that I have a habit of assuming that everybody follows my train of thought. It's such a small place that, if he goes, I shall be almost bound to meet him. What's such a small place? Cried Beatrice with emphasized despair. Why, Neopalier, of course, said I. Why should anybody, except you, be so insane as to go there? She asked. If he's the man I think, he comes from there, I explained, as I rose for the last time. For I had been getting up to go and sitting down again several times. Then he'll think twice before he goes back, pronounced Beatrice decisively. She was irreconcilable about my poor island. Denny and I walked off together. As we went he observed, I suppose that Chop's got no end of money. Stefan's I began. No, hang it, you're as bad as Miss Hipgrave says. I mean Bennett Hamlin. Oh, yes, absolutely no end to it, I believe. Denny looked sagacious. He's very free with his dinners, he observed. Don't let's worrying about it, I suggested, taking his arm. I was not worried about it myself. Indeed, for the moment, my island monopolized my mind, and my attachment to Beatrice was not of such a romantic character as to make me ready to be jealous on slight grounds. Mrs. Hipgrave said the engagement was based on general suitability. Now it is difficult to be very passionate over that. If you don't mind, I don't, said Denny reasonably. That's right. It's only a little way, Beatrice. I stopped abruptly. We were now on the steps outside the restaurant, and I had just perceived a scrap of paper lying on the mosaic pavement. I stooped down and picked it up. It proved to be a fragment torn from the menu card. I turned it over. Hello, what's this? Said I, searching for my eyeglass, which was as usual somewhere in the small of my back. Denny gave me the glass, and I read what was written on the back. It was in Greek, and it ran thus. By way of road small yacht there arrives 7th. I turned the piece of paper over in my hand. I drew a conclusion or two. One was that my tall neighbor was named Stephanopoulos. Another that he had made good use of his ears better than I had made of mine. For a third, I guessed that he would go to Neopalier. For a fourth, I fancied that Neopalier was the place to which the lady had declared she would accompany him. Then I fell to wondering why all these things should be so. Why he wished to remember the route of my journey, the date of my arrival, and the fact that I meant to hire a yacht. Finally, those two chance encounters, taken with the rest, assumed a more interesting complexion. When you've done with that bit of paper, observed Denny, in a tone expressive of exaggerated patience, we might as well go on, old fellow. All right. I've done with it for the present, said I, but I took the liberty of slipping Mr. Constantine Stephanopoulos' memorandum into my pocket. The general result of the evening was to increase most distinctly my interest in Neopalier. I went to bed still thinking of my purchase, and I recollect that the last thing which came into my head before I went to sleep was, what did she mean by pointing to the ring? Well, I found an answer to that later on. Dear audience, sometimes the most dangerous thing we can do in life is not to take a risk, but to live only by other people's expectations. In this chapter, our hero chooses something everyone else thinks is foolish, a lonely island, far from ships, cables, and polite society. His fiancée laughs at it, his friends don't understand it, even the ambassador quietly warns him that the island may not welcome a new master. And yet he goes on, half for a dream, half for freedom. That is the question for all of us. Do we only walk on safe, crowded roads, or dare we step onto our own island, knowing it may test us, even threaten us? Because on Neopalier, the dream of a quiet paradise is about to collide with old grudges, hidden danger, and a woman with a ring and a secret. Stay with me. The real story begins when he finally sets foot on the island. Until the moment of our parting came, I had no idea that Beatrice Hipgrave felt my going at all. She was not in the habit of displaying emotion, and I was much surprised at the reluctance with which she bade me goodbye. So far, however, was she from reproaching me that she took all the blame on herself, saying that if she had been kinder and nicer to me, I should never have thought about my island. In this she was quite wrong, but when I told her so, and assured her that I had no fault to find with her behavior, I was met with an almost passionate assertion of her unworthiness and an entreaty that I should not spend on her a love that she did not deserve. Her abasement and penitence compelled me to show, and indeed to feel, a good deal of tenderness for her. She was pathetic and pretty in her unusual earnestness and unexplained distress. I went the length of offering to put off my expedition until after our wedding. And although she besought me to do nothing of the kind, I believed that we might in the end have arranged matters on this footing had we been left to ourselves. But Mrs. Hipgrave saw fit to intrude on our interview at this point, and she at once pooh-poohed the notion, declaring that I should be better out of the way for a few months. Beatrice did not resist her mother's conclusion. But when we were alone again, she became very agitated, begging me always to think well of her, and asking if I were really attached to her. I did not understand this mood, which was very unlike her ordinary manner. But I responded with a hearty and warm avowal of confidence in her. And I met her questions as to my own feelings by pledging my word very solemnly that absence should, so far as I was concerned, make no difference, and that she might rely implicitly on my faithful affection. This assurance seemed to give her very little comfort, although I repeated it more than once. And when I left her, I was in a state of some perplexity, for I could not follow the bent of her thoughts nor appreciate the feelings that moved her. I was, however, considerably touched, and upbraided myself for not having hitherto done justice to the depth and sincerity of nature which underlay her external frivolity. I expressed this self-condemnation to Denny Swinton, but he met it very coldly, and would not be drawn into any discussion of the subject. Denny was not wont to conceal his opinions, and had never pretended to be enthusiastic about my engagement. This attitude of his had not troubled me before, but I was annoyed at it now, and I retaliated by asseverating my affection for Beatrice in terms of even exaggerated emphasis, and hers for me with no less vehemence. These troubles and perplexities vanished before the zest and interest which our preparations and start excited. Denny and I were like a pair of schoolboys off for a holiday, and spent hours in forecasting what we should do and how we should fare on the island. These speculations were extremely amusing, but in the long run they were proved to be, one and all, wide of the mark. Had I known No Pallier then, as well as I came to know it afterwards, I should have recognized the futility of attempting to prophesy what would or would not happen there. As it was, we span our cobwebs merrily all the way to Rhodes, where we arrived without event and without accident. Here we picked up Hogevert and embarked on the smart little steam yacht which he had procured for me. A day or two was spent in arranging our stores and buying what more we wanted, for we could not expect to be able to purchase any luxuries in No Pallier. I was rather surprised to find no letter for me from the old lord, but I had no thought of waiting for a formal invitation, and pressed on the hour of departure as much as I could. Here, also, I saw the first of my new subjects, Hogevert having engaged a couple of men who had come to him saying that they were from No Pallier and were anxious to work their passage back. I was delighted to have them, and fell at once to studying them with immense attention. They were fine, tall, capable-looking fellows, and the two, with ourselves, made a crew more than large enough for our little boat. For both Denny and I could make ourselves useful on board, and Hogevert could do something of everything on land or water, while Watkins acted as cook and steward. The Neopalians were, as they stated in answer to my questions, brothers. Their names were Spyro and Demetri, and they informed us that their family had served the lords of No Pallier for many generations. Hearing this, I was less inclined to resent the undeniable reserve and even surliness with which they met my advances. I made allowance for their hereditary attachment to the outgoing family, and their natural want of cordiality towards the intruder did not prevent me from plying them with many questions concerning my predecessors on the throne of the island. My perseverance was ill-rewarded, but I succeeded in learning that the only member of the family on the island, besides the old lord, was a girl whom they called the Lady Euphrosyne, the daughter of the lord's brother, who was dead. Next I asked after my friend of the Optimum restaurant, Constantine. He was this lady's cousin, once or twice removed. I did not make out the exact degree of kinship, but Demetri hastened to inform me that he came very seldom to the island, and had not been there for 2 years. And he is not expected there now? I asked. He was not when we left, my lord, answered Demetri, and it seemed to me that he threw an inquiring glance at his brother, who added hastily, "But what should we poor men know of the Lord Constantine's doings?" "Do you know where he is now?" I asked. "No, my lord," they answered together, and with great emphasis. I cannot deny that something struck me as peculiar in their manner, but when I mentioned my impression to Denny he scoffed at me. "You've been reading old Byron again," he said scornfully. "Do you think they're corsairs?" Well, a man is not a fool simply because he reads Byron, and I maintain my opinion that the brothers were embarrassed at my questions. Moreover, I caught Spyro, the more truculent looking of the pair, scowling at me more than once when he did not know I had my eye on him. These little mysteries, however, did nothing but add sauce to my delight as we sprang over the blue waters. And my joy was complete when, on the morning of the day I had appointed, the 7th of May, Denny cried land, and looking over the starboard bow I saw the cloud on the sea that was Neopalier. Day came bright and glorious, and as we drew nearer to our enchanted isle, we distinguished its features and conformation. The coast was rocky save, where a small harbor opened to the sea, and the rocks ran up from the coast, rising higher and higher till they culminated in a quite respectable peak in the center. The telescope showed cultivated ground and vineyards, mingled with woods, on the slopes of the mountain. And about halfway up, sheltered on 3 sides, backed by thick woods, and commanding a splendid sea view, stood an old gray battlemented house. "There's my house," I cried in natural exultation, pointing with my finger. It was a moment in my life, a moment to mark. "Hurrah!" cried Denny, throwing up his hat in sympathy. Dmitri was standing near, and met this ebullition with a grim smile. "I hope my lord will find the house comfortable," said he. "We shall soon make it comfortable," said Hogevert. "I dare say it's half a ruin now." "It's good enough now for a Stephanopoulos," said the fellow with a surly frown. The inference we were meant to draw was plain even to the point of incivility. At 5 o'clock in the evening, we entered the harbor of Neopalier and brought up alongside a rather crazy wooden jetty which ran some 50 feet out from the shore. Our arrival appeared to create great excitement. Men, women, and children came running down the narrow steep street which climbed up the hill from the harbor. We heard shrill cries, and 100 fingers were pointed at us. We landed. Nobody came forward to greet us. I looked round, but saw no one who could be the old lord. But I perceived a stout man who wore an air of importance, and walking up to him I asked him very politely if he would be so good as to direct me to the inn, for I had discovered from Dmitri that there was a modest house where we could lodge that night. I was too much in love with my island to think of sleeping on board the yacht. The stout man looked at Denny and me, then he looked at Dmitri and Spyro, who stood near us, smiling their usual grim smiles. At last he answered my question by another, a rather abrupt one. "What do you want, sir?" And he lifted his tasseled cap a few inches and replaced it on his head. "I want to know the way to the inn," I answered. "You have come to visit Neopalier?" he asked. A number of people had gathered round us now, and all fixed their eyes on my face. "Oh," said I carelessly, "I'm the purchaser of the island, you know. I have come to take possession." Nobody spoke. Perfect silence reigned for half a minute. "I hope we shall get on well together," I said, with my pleasantest smile. Still no answer came. The people round still stared. But presently the stout man, altogether ignoring my friendly advances, said curtly, "I keep the inn. Come. I will take you to it." He turned and led the way up the street. We followed, the people making a lane for us and still regarding us with stony stares. Denny gave expression to my feelings as well as his own. "It can hardly be described as an ovation," he observed. "Surly brutes," muttered Hogevert. "It is not the way to receive his lordship," agreed Watkins, more in sorrow than in anger. Watkins had very high ideas of the deference due to his lordship. The fat innkeeper walked ahead. I quickened my pace and overtook him. "The people don't seem very pleased to see me," I remarked. He shook his head, but made no answer. Then he stopped before a substantial house. We followed him in, and he led us upstairs to a large room. It overlooked the street, but, somewhat to my surprise, the windows were heavily barred. The door also was massive and had large bolts inside and outside. "You take good care of your houses, my friend," said Denny with a laugh. "We like to keep what we have, in Neopalier," said he. I asked him if he would provide us with a meal, and, assenting gruffly, he left us alone. The food was some time in coming, and we stood at the window, peering through our prison bars. Our high spirits were dashed by the unfriendly reception. My island should have been more gracious, it was so beautiful. However, it's a better welcome than we should have got to 100 years ago, I said with a laugh, trying to make the best of the matter. Dinner, which the landlord himself brought in, cheered us again, and we lingered over it till dusk began to fall, discussing whether I ought to visit the Lord, or whether, seeing that he had not come to receive me, my dignity did not demand that I should await his visit. And it was on this latter course that we finally decided. "But he'll hardly come tonight," said Denny, jumping up. I wonder if there are any decent beds here. Hogevert and Watkins had, by my directions, sat down with us. The former was now smoking his pipe at the window, while Watkins was busy overhauling our luggage. We had brought light bags, the rods, guns, and other smaller articles. The rest was in the yacht. Hearing beds mentioned, Watkins shook his head in dismal presage, saying, "We had better sleep on board, my lord." Not I. What? Leave the island now we've got here? No, Watkins. Very good, my lord, said Watkins impassively. A sudden call came from Hogevert, and I joined him at the window. The scene outside was indeed remarkable. In the narrow paved street, gloomy now in the failing light, there must have been 50 or 60 men standing in a circle, surrounded by an outer fringe of women and children. And in the center stood our landlord, his burly figure swaying to and fro as he poured out a low-voiced but vehement harangue. Sometimes he pointed towards us, oftener along the ascending road that led to the interior. I could not hear a word he said, but presently all his auditors raised their hands towards heaven. I saw that some of the hands held guns, some clubs, some knives. And all the men cried with furious energy, "Nigh, nigh." Yes, yes, then the whole body and the greater part of the grown men on the island must have been present started off in compact array up the road, the innkeeper at their head. By his side walked another man, whom I had not noticed before. He wore an ordinary suit of tweeds, but carried himself with an assumption of much dignity. His face I could not see. "Well, what's the meaning of that?" I exclaimed, looking down on the street, empty again save for groups of white-clothed women, who talked eagerly to one another, gesticulating and pointing now towards our inn, now towards where the men had gone. "Perhaps it's their parliament," suggested Denny. "Or perhaps they've repented of their rudeness and are going to erect a triumphal arch." These conjectures, being obviously ironical, did not assist the matter, although they amused their author. "Anyhow," said I should like to investigate the thing. Suppose we go for a stroll." The proposal was accepted at once. We put on our hats, took sticks, and prepared to go. Then I glanced at the luggage. "Since I was so foolish as to waste my money on revolvers?" said I, with an inquiring glance at Hogevert. "The evening air will not hurt them," said he. And we each stowed a revolver in our pockets. We felt, I think, rather ashamed of our timidity, but the Neapolitans certainly looked rough customers. Leading the way to the door, I turned the handle. The door did not open. I pulled hard at it. Then I looked at my companions. "Queer," said Denny, and he began to whistle. Hogevert got the little lantern, which he always had handy, and carefully inspected the door. "Locked," he announced, and bolted top and bottom. A solid door too, and he struck it with his fist. Then he crossed to the window and looked at the bars. And finally he said to me, "I don't think we can have our walk, my lord." Well, I burst out laughing. The thing was too absurd. Under cover of our animated talk, the landlord must have bolted us in. The bars made the window no use. A skilled burglar might have beaten those bolts, and a battering ram would, no doubt, have smashed the door. We had neither burglar nor ram. "We're caught, my boy," said Denny, "nicely caught." You're watching this video on Good Stories. If you're enjoying it and find it inspiring, don't forget to hit that like button. It's the best way to support the channel and keep these stories coming. But what's the game? I had asked myself that question already, but had found no answer. To tell the truth, I was wondering whether Neapolier was going to turn out as conservative a country as the Turkish ambassador had hinted. It was Watkins who suggested an answer. "I imagine, my lord," said he, "that the natives Watkins always called the Neapolians natives have gone to speak to the gentleman who sold the island to your lordship." "Gad," said Denny, "I hope it'll be a pleasant interview." Hogevert's broad, good-humored face had assumed an anxious look. He knew something about the people of these islands, so did I. "Trouble, is it?" I asked him. "I'm afraid so," he answered, and then we turned to the window again, except Denny, who wasted some energy and made a useless din by battering at the door till we beseeched him to let it alone. There in the room we sat for nearly 2 hours. Darkness fell. The women had ceased their gossiping, but still stood about the street and in the doorways of their houses. It was 9 o'clock before matters showed any progress. Then came shouts from the road above us, the flash of torches, the tread of men's feet in a quick triumphant march. Next, the stalwart figures of the picturesque fellows, with their white kilts gleaming through the darkness, came again into sight, seeming wilder and more imposing in the alternating glare and gloom of the torches and the deepening night. The man in tweeds was no longer visible. Our innkeeper was alone in front, and all, as they marched, sang loudly a rude barbarous sort of chant, repeating it again and again, while the women and children, crowding out to meet the men, caught up the refrain in shrill voices, till the whole air seemed full of it. So martial and inspiring was the rude tune that our feet began to beat in time with it, and I felt the blood quicken in my veins. I have tried to put the words of it into English, in a shape as rough, I fear, as the rough original. Here it is. Ours is the land, death to the hand that filches the land. Dead is that hand. Ours is the land, forever we hold it. Dead's he that sold it. Ours is the land, dead is the hand. Again and again they hurled forth the defiant words, until at last they stopped opposite the inn with one final long-drawn shout of savage triumph. "Well, this is a go," said Denny, drawing a long breath. "What are the beggars up to?" "What have they been up to?" I asked, for I could not doubt that the song we had heard had been chanted over a dead Stephanopoulos 100 years before. At this age of the world, the idea seemed absurd, preposterous, horrible. But there was no law nearer than Rhodes, and their only Turk's law. The sole law here was the law of the Stephanopoloi, and if that law lost its force by the crime of the hand, which should wield it, why, strange things might happen even today in Nopalier. And we were caught in the inn like rats in a trap. "I don't see," remarked old Hogevert, laying a hand on my shoulder, "any harm in loading our revolvers, my lord." I did not see any harm in it either, and we all followed Hogevart's advice, and also filled our pockets with cartridges. I was determined, I think we were all determined not to be bullied by these islanders, and their skull and crossbones ditty. A quarter of an hour passed, then there came a knock at the door, while the bolt shot back. "I shall go out," said I, springing to my feet. The door opened, and the face of a lad appeared. "Vlaco the innkeeper bids you descend," said he. And then, catching sight perhaps of our revolvers, he turned and ran downstairs again, at his best speed. Following him, we came to the door of the inn. It was ringed round with men, and directly opposite to us stood Vlaco. When he saw me, he commanded silence with a gesture of his hand, and addressed me in the following surprising style. "The Lady Euphrosyne, of her grace, bids you depart in peace. Go, then, to your boat and depart, thanking God for his mercy." "Wait a bit, my man," said I. "Where is the lord of the island?" "Did you not know that he died a week ago?" asked Vlaco, with apparent surprise. "Died?" we exclaimed one and all. "Yes, sir. The Lady Euphrosyne, Lady of Nopalier, bids you go." "What did he die of?" "Of a fever," said Vlaco gravely, and several of the men round him nodded their heads and murmured in no less grave assent, "Yes, of a fever." "I am very sorry for it," said I. "But as he sold the island to me before he died, I don't see what the lady, with all respect to her, has got to do with it. Nor do I know what this rabble is doing about the door. Bid them disperse." This attempt at hauteur was most decidedly thrown away. Vlaco seemed not to hear what I said. He pointed with his finger towards the harbor. "There lies your boat. Demetri and Spyro cannot go with you, but you will be able to manage her yourselves. Listen now. Till 6 in the morning you are free to go. If you are found in Nopalier 1 minute after, you will never go. Think and be wise." And he, and all the rest, as the one spring moved the whole body, wheeled round and marched off up the hill again, breaking out into the old chant when they had gone about 100 yards. We were left alone in the doorway of the inn, looking, I must admit, rather blank. Upstairs again we went, and I sat down by the window and gazed out on the night. It was very dark, and seemed darker now that the gleaming torches were gone. Not a soul was to be seen. The islanders, having put matters on a satisfactory footing, were off to bed. I sat thinking. Presently Denny came to me, and put his hand on my shoulder. "Going to cave in, Charlie?" he asked. "My dear Denny," said I wish you were at home with your mother." He smiled and repeated, "Going to cave in, old chap?" "No, by Jove, I'm not," cried I, leaping up. "They've had my money, and I'm going to have my island." "Take the yacht, my lord," counseled Hogevert, "and come back with enough force from Rhodes." Well, here was sense. My impulse was nonsense. We four could not conquer the island. I swallowed my pride. So be it, said I. But look here, it's only just 12. We might have a look round before we go. I want to see the place, you know, for I was very sorely vexed at being turned out of my island. Hogevert grumbled a little at my proposal, but here I overruled him. We took our revolvers again, left the inn, and struck straight up the road. We met nobody. For nearly a mile we mounted, the way becoming steeper with every step. Then there was a sharp turn off the main road. That will lead to the house, said Hogevert, who had studied the map of No Palier very carefully. Then we'll have a look at the house. Show us a light, Hogevert. It's precious dark. Hogevert opened his lantern and cast its light on the way. But suddenly he extinguished it again and drew us close into the rocks that edged the road. We saw coming towards us, in the darkness, 2 figures. They rode small horses. Their faces could not be seen, but as they passed our silent, motionless forms, one said in a clear, sweet, girlish voice, "Surely they will go." "They'll go or pay the penalty," said the other voice. At the sound of it, I started, for it was the voice of my neighbor in the restaurant, Constantine Stephanopoulos. "I shall be near at hand, sleeping in the town," said the girl's voice, "and the people will listen to me." "The people will kill them if they don't go," we heard Constantine answer, in tones that witnessed no great horror at the idea. Then the couple disappeared in the darkness. "On to the house," I cried in sudden excitement, for I was angry now, angry at the utter humbling scorn with which they treated me. Another 10 minutes groping brought us in front of the old gray house which we had seen from the sea. We walked boldly up to it. The door stood open. We went in and found ourselves in a large hall. The wooden floor was carpeted here and there with mats and skins. A long table ran down the middle. The walls were decorated with medieval armor and weapons. The windows were but narrow slits, the walls massive and deep. The door was a ponderous iron-bound affair. It shamed even the stout doors of our inn. I called loudly, "Is anyone here?" Nobody answered. The servants must have been drawn off to the town by the excitement of the procession and the singing, or, perhaps, there were no servants. I could not tell. I sat down in a large armchair by the table. I enjoyed the sense of proprietorship. I was in my own house. Denny sat on the table by me, dangling his legs. For a long while none of us spoke. Then I exclaimed suddenly, "By heaven, why shouldn't we see it through?" I rose, put my hands against the massive door, and closed and bolted it, saying, "Let them open that at 6 o'clock in the morning." "Hurrah!" cried Denny, leaping down from his table, on fire with excitement in a moment. I faced Hogevert. He shook his head, but he smiled. Watkins stood by with his usual imperturbability. He wanted to know what his lordship decided, that was all, and when I said nothing more, he asked, "Then your lordship will sleep here tonight?" "I'll stay here tonight, anyhow, Watkins," said I. "I'm not going to be driven out of my own island by anybody." As I spoke, I brought my fist down on the table with a crash. And then to our amazement we heard, from somewhere in the dark recesses of the hall, where the faint light of Hogevart's lantern did not reach, a low but distinct groan, as of someone in pain. Watkins shuddered, Hogevart looked rather uncomfortable, Denny and I listened eagerly. Again the groan came. I seized the lantern from Hogevart's hand and rushed in the direction of the sound. There, in the corner of the hall, on a couch covered with a rug, lay an old man in an uneasy attitude, groaning now and then and turning restlessly. By his side sat an old serving woman in weary heavy slumber. In a moment I guessed the truth part of the truth. "He's not dead of that fever yet," said I. Dear audience, sometimes in life, we are most blind, not when danger is far away, but when it is standing right in front of us wearing a familiar face. In this part of the story, our hero is certain about 3 things: his fiancée's love, his own feelings, and the dream of a quiet island he has bought with his own money. Yet he understands neither Beatrice's strange distress, nor the secrets in the eyes of the islanders, nor the true cost of insisting, "This is my island." It's a reminder for us too. How often do we rush toward a dream, convinced we're in control, while other people silently carry fears, loyalties, and plans we know nothing about? And when your dream finally collides with someone else's home, who really has the right to stay? Let's keep listening and see what price he must pay to find out.